you've been a fan of the channel for a while, or if you know me personally, you're probably aware that I am a fan of and a participant in a ton of different hobbies. Now obviously I've been putting out a lot of video game and Overwatch themed videos in the most recent things, but if you look back further into the channel, you'll see things like extreme sports and even some goofy sword fighting and stuff like that, and that's just to name a few. So, but my oldest hobby, the one that I'm still doing to this day, is making stuff. But what I enjoy even more than that, or on top of it, is when I get to combine that hobby and that passion for making things with any of the other ones. And so today we're going to be doing that by making some DIY Shurikens that are based off of Genji from Overwatch. If you've got, you know, just a very small working budget, 10-20 bucks, and a few common tools in your garage, you can probably make one of these for yourselves. Probably the first step you're going to want to do is to make some kind of a template for cutting out the Shurikens that Genji has. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. Probably the easiest would be to just go onto, you know, Google image or something, type in Genji Shuriken, whatever, and find a pic that you like and just use your printer to print it off. Now if you're a true craftsman, you could probably just eyeball it and kind of take a Sharpie, draw out the pattern. I'm kind of in between there, and my printer was broken, so I went ahead and just did the ghetto method, where I literally held up a piece of thin paper to my monitor and just traced around the picture lightly, of course, with a pencil. Now mine's got a little bit of a schmutz right here, you can see, and that's not you know, absolutely necessary, although it does add to the flavor of the piece a little bit, so I'll just leave that at your discretion. So once you've got your template made, you're going to need something to put it onto, and I've got here 2 old saw blades. Now these are great for a couple of reasons. First of all, they are cheap even if you don't have any, but if you make very much stuff, eventually you're going to end up with some blades that are dull and you're not going to want to use them anymore. That's why I've got this one written right there. It's telling me that this is dull, so it's only for donut use, and I don't eat that many donuts right now, at least I can't afford to. Basically, you can see I've got several other little detail points on the Shuriken, and those are basically just trying to tell me where you've got some holes that I need to drill as well, and also where some of the angle bevels are going to be there. You could go ahead and just take a Sharpie, draw around the outside, and you'd have, you know, a pretty good line that you could follow. I think I'm going to use a slightly different technique, where I'm actually going to take some craft glue or spray adhesive. There's 3 little half circles around the design in the center, and I think we want to do that now because it's going to make our bits not wobble as much as if we had waited until we'd cut the ends off. And it's also just a bigger piece of something, so it's easier to get a good grip on. As always, you want to make sure that you are wearing your safety protection, and we're going to practice safe braiding as well, and just tuck that back because we don't want to get it twisted up in a drill and get scalped. Screw here and a hammer to mark my kind of center points. I don't have a center punch, but this works, you know, perfectly fine for my uses, and just goes to show you that sometimes even a little prick can be helpful. Sometimes a little oil just helps keep everything lubricated. It was taking so long and it was so difficult to drill through that hardened steel of the saw blade that I've kind of decided to forego that for the moment and go over to the cutting the saw blade out with the grinder. So as you can see right here, I have 2 sides of it already kind of cut out, and it's kind of hard to see, but if you get the light just right, you can see where I've actually scored along where the paper template was for the last end piece, and you can also see where the initial hole that I drilled was, and that, you know, just to get that first hole probably took, you know, 3 minutes, you know, maybe 5 minutes. We're just going to try and cut it out, and then we're going to see if we can go in and get a little bit of that form by actually, you know, kind of grinding it to shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is just try and clean up the edges just a little bit using this belt sander.
already looks quite a bit nicer. This side's still a little bit scarred up, but just from a light sanding.
It's like almost like the Illuminati here. So we've got our Shuriken all cut out, and the next step is to cut in these indents, which is what we started to do with the drill earlier, but it was just going to take too long for me. And so what we're going to try and do is use this little, very small drum sander. And took a Sharpie and kind of drew on the accent marks. And these are just going to act as a little bit of a guide for as we sharpen and shape this. Pretty much decided that the material is just too thin to be able to do these big, deep bevels like that. So to keep some of that kind of design aesthetic, I'm actually going to take a very, very small, thin Dremel cutting tool and just put a really thin score along each one of those, and then we can accent it a little bit more with some paint, probably. So here it is. Basically the technique that I used for the painting was to basically just take some acrylic paint, doesn't have to be anything fancy, and I used black and basically just went into all these grooves that I had cut into the Shuriken. And I wasn't particularly careful because then afterwards I wiped most of the excess paint off with a cotton swab that has rubbing alcohol on it. So the rubbing alcohol rubs off most of the paint so that what's left is mostly just what is in the actual grooves, so that gives it a little bit extra definition without being just paint on the surface. As far as the green, I literally just made a 10-second template out of some tape. I got it to about the right size that I wanted, and then I was able to reuse this on each of the 6 pieces and just go over with a thin brush. So very, very easy. Then I sealed it with some clear coat, and it turned out pretty nice. Well guys, that's it for today. I hope you liked the build. If you did, please do me a favor and look below and give me a thumbs up. But at any rate, I really, really appreciate your support, and I hope to see you in the next one.